Thank you, Chair. We're good to go. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and welcome everyone to tonight's SACRE meeting. Due to current government guidance on social distancing and the COVID-19 virus, council meetings will not be open for members of the public to physically attend. Arrangements have been made for the press and public to watch council meetings via the council's online webcast channel at thurrock.gov.uk/webcast. This meeting will be live streamed and recorded, with the video recording being published via the council's webcast channel, which I've just given the URL for. Any queries, contracts, democratic services at Thurrock Council. When we come to the Youth Cabinet item, we'll just double check that we're all comfortable with that bit being recorded and broadcast. I know that you've attended recorded and broadcast meetings before, but we will just check that. The agenda is as published. We're going to change the order a little bit. So we're going to take the first part of item 8, which is what do stakeholders say about RE in Thurrock, where we're going to have the discussion involving Youth Cabinet members as our first main item of business, so straight after declarations of interest. After that, any of the Youth Cabinet attendees who would like to leave at that point, you're welcome to do so. If you'd rather watch the rest of the meeting while you're here, then you'd be very welcome to do that as well. But if we start with the administrative items on the agenda, apologies for absence. Kenna, have we received any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have. We've received apologies from our British representative, and 2 of the teachers have sent apologies, Ms Jellicoe and Ms Webster, and also Councillor Collins from Committee D has sent his apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, can I just add, I've just had an email come through from Lynn Fry, who seems to have been having exactly the same problems as me. So, Kenna, I don't know if you can rescue her in the way you rescued me.
Yeah, no problem. I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Minutes of the last meeting. They've been distributed to committee members and published online. Are there any comments on the minutes? This is where everyone frantically starts flicking through and starts reading.
Chair, do you want some updates on the actions that I took as a consequence of the meeting, or would you like those at some other point?
We'll do those a bit later. We'll just go through the admin items quickly first.
Absolutely fine.
So are all the committee members happy to approve the minutes of the meeting held on 4th of November as a correct record? If you could just nod to indicate your assent, and if anybody's not happy, could you make that clear now, please? Okay, minutes are approved. Item 3, items of urgent business, there are none. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest that members of the committee need to make? Okay, so we're good to go. So what we'll do next is take the first part of item 8. What do stakeholders say about RE in Thurrock? Clearly, as SACRE, one of our key responsibilities and duties is overseeing, reviewing and issuing the agreed syllabus for the teaching of RE in Thurrock. That cycle is about to start again, and one of the things that we're committed to doing is consulting widely with a whole range of stakeholders who have an interest in RE teaching within Thurrock prior to conducting that review. And I'm delighted that some members of the Youth Cabinet have been able to come along to our meeting tonight. We're going to run this as kind of a two-way conversation, really. I know that can be quite difficult over the internet, but many of us are getting fairly practiced at this now. So we've got some questions that I guess we'd like to ask you. There are some suggested questions on page 37 of the minutes of the agenda for those who haven't seen it. And we're also very welcome for you to ask questions of us. But Roberta, if you could start off just by introducing the Youth Cabinet and those members who are here tonight, please.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Thank you very much, Chair. So my name's Roberta Fontaine and I oversee the Youth Cabinet. Today with me we have Alicia, who is our Member of Youth Parliament. I don't know if, Alicia, you want to unmute yourself and say hi?
Hello, hi, as Roberta said, my name is Alicia. I am the Member of Youth Parliament for Thurrock. I've been on the Youth Cabinet now for I think about 4 years, and I'm currently the oldest member, which is scary, but I feel bad because you're all lovely and young people right here.
Happens to the best of us. You start off as the youngest member of it, and a few years later.
We also have Ashley with us as well. Ashley, do you want to unmute yourself and say hi?
Oh, hello. My name is Ashley, and I am a member of Youth Cabinet.
We also have Danielle, who's one of our newest members.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
There you
Hi,
go.
Danielle, welcome.
We've got Delisha as well, who's one of our newest members as well.
Hi, I'm Delisha. I'm Danielle's sister.
Excellent.
And we should also have Cece as well.
Hi, I'm Cece, and I've been a member of the Youth Cabinet for almost a year now, and yeah.
Yeah, so that's all of the members that were able to join us today, and they've been prepped and they have been sent the questions. So they should be all ready and prepared to answer your questions.
Great, that's really good. Roberta, I don't know what your normal procedure is. Clearly this is being webcast and recorded. Are all the Youth Cabinet members happy and comfortable for this to be recorded and put online? Because I'm more than happy to stop the recording if you're not as comfortable with that.
I would just double check, is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Great. Given that this will go on record, clearly we're keen to have an open conversation. It's probably advisable not to mention kind of specific pupils, specific teachers, specific schools, unless it's particularly relevant to the subject matter in question, unless you can avoid that, just to make things less identifiable, seeing as we're discussing issues concerning children and young people. So rather than me giving you a grilling, I was going to suggest by maybe if we could start going around the Youth Cabinet members. You've had a chance to see some of the questions that we were proposing to ask you. Maybe if each of you could pick one of those, sort of a question that perhaps stood out to you and you thought I'd quite like to answer that one. And if we go around the 5 of you and you maybe use that as a means of getting some of your own comments, and then I'll open it up to the members of the committee to ask any further questions that they'd like, and then I'll open up to yourselves if there's any questions or comments you'd like to chuck in. But maybe if we start with Alicia and then go round, were there any of the questions on that list that sort of jumped out at you, or you thought that you'd quite like to answer or share with us as members of the committee?
Oh, that's a good question, I must admit. I was proper expecting a grilling, and then, you know, not what I was expecting, but thank you anyway. I think something that kind of popped out to me was the experiences of RE in primary and secondary school and how they differ. For me, from what I remember of RE in primary school, I went to Catholic RE and Catholic secondary, both Roman Catholic. I remember RE being taught very cross-curricular, not just being kind of, you would learn it in just RE, it would something that would kind of panel through like history, geography. You'd kind of learn about it in English as well. Wasn't just something that was just RE. And I remember when we did learn about it, it was very more kind of learning through, like we would do artwork, and it wasn't just so, this is like the teaching, this is what we think, what's your opinion. It was very much kind of a, this is what we're going to teach you, now do it through a means of art, or do it through a means of this or that or whatever. And I kind of think that's a lot kind of more useful than it being just drummed into, this is it, there you go, now go write a paragraph, the end. Whereas secondary experience for me, I was then obviously forced. I like to say the word forced because I did go to an RE. I did go to a religious school, so I did sign up for the GCSE at the end of the day. But I didn't want to do the GCSE, so I do say forced into doing GCSE RE, where it is very much by the textbook. You have to follow all the rules, like obviously because it's the qualification. And I didn't say I enjoyed it at all. Wasn't probably one of the lessons I looked forward to because it was very much you didn't get much freedom with it. And I mean, going into kind of key stage 3 RE, I think again, it wasn't a lesson I looked forward to because it was very much written and kind of, there was no freedom with it where there was in kind of the lower key stage 1 and key stage 2. If that kind of answers a question.
Yeah, it does. That's really interesting. Did you find that the same was true of other subjects? Of as you got to secondary, then learning the material and pushing it out became characteristic of many subjects, or was that distinctive to RE?
I would say it did happen with other subjects, but I would say it was much more distinctive with RE.
Okay, I see Ashley had a hand up and then Councillor Kerrin.
Oh, I don't mind if that person goes before me.
Councillor Kerrin?
Thank you, Chair. And can I say firstly, thank you, Alicia and the rest of the Youth Cabinet for being here. It's wonderful to hear your perspective. I'm asking from your point of view, how important do you and people of your age group consider sort of RE to be? And really the question which stood out for me on the appendix is the one about the UK is becoming less religious, but the world is becoming more religious. That's a really interesting contrast. So do you think knowing that makes any more difference to how people learn about RE and the importance they have with it?
Would any of the Youth Cabinet members like to jump in on that one?
I mean, I don't mind if anyone else wishes to. No? Okay then. Go on, go for it, guys.
Don't worry, you can do it.
No, go on.
Was that Ashley?
Ashley, that's for you.
Go on then, Ashley. You seem to be muted.
Alicia, why don't you go ahead?
I was going back to Councillor's question in terms of RE and whether as a generation we kind of, our viewpoint on it, I think that's kind of where you're trying to get at. I'd say it is very dependent on kind of the background you come from and how kind of religious your family is and kind of that sort of side of it. I'd say as a whole, as a generation, we are becoming less religious, but I think it is very dependent on kind of your background and your upbringing, if that kind of points that point. And then as a society, in terms of RE, I don't think there's as much of a focus as what it was when I was kind of going through primary school to what it is now. But that's obviously, I haven't been to primary school in 10 years, so I don't know.
Ashley, you were next in line, I think. Did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that probably religious education is kind of like a downfall in some schools, because like usually it's not really that respected, and it's very seen as like a subject that you have to do instead of like, because like usually we don't do as much practicals and as much trips on it as other subjects, if you kind of understand.
Chair, could I just follow up one question, please?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for those answers, Alicia and Ashley. Really interesting. And I think one theme I got from both of your answers is the relative importance that people of your generation attach to RE. So just a final question, and I'll let the others chip in. What, in your opinion, do you think could make RE more respected, something that people want to study, and and something which directly related to what you said, Alicia, about your background being important. What do you think could be in place to make RE important, regardless of whether you come from a religious or more secular sort of background?
Delicia's got her hand up.
Go for it, Delicia.
So what I was going to say is, so if people with more like a religious background or had different cultural backgrounds can like appreciate the different religions more, I think. Yeah. And to make it more interesting, like in year 8 and year 9, we didn't just do religious education. It was, we linked it to animal cruelty and to sweatshops, and the whole of year 9 we did crime and punishment, and so we did about the death penalty and looking at different case studies, so that made it more interesting and people like it more.
Chair, can I just add, for information for the committee, if you like, that and for the Youth Parliament, actually, this is Deborah Weston, by the way, I'm the RE advisor, that actually the experience that Alicia would be having from her experience from being a school with a religious character will be very different from the experience of those that attend community schools or schools without a religious character. The syllabus, of course, that we've devised is not applicable in schools with religious character. They don't follow it. And the same in terms of the GCSE. I expect you studied, Alicia, Roman Catholic Christianity plus, what was the plus?
There we go. Judaism.
Right. So yeah, so they would have studied that kind of route. Whereas I don't know if there's any other year 10s or 11s or 12s or 13s in the cabinet, but they will have probably had the opportunity to study more ethical issues, and the ones that Delicia mentioned, crime and punishment is a GCSE theme, and those kind of themes would be more prevalent, I would think, in the experience of the rest of our schools than Alicia would have had, just due to the character of the school. It's what's on the tin, as she's quite rightly pointed out.
Thank you. Danielle, at the risk of slightly picking on you, would you mind going next? And was there a question that you'd like to sort of have a crack at?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer one of them. I'm going to have a go at the one that says, "In what jobs would you learn, like use your RE learning?" One of the first things that popped into my head was cooking, because a lot of people who are religious, for example, don't eat pork or beef. I also thought about doctors, because for whatever religious reason you might not decide to get a blood transfusion or a surgery. Those are the two kind of things that I thought about, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Cece, did you have one that you'd like to pick up on?
Not necessarily one question like in particular, but I guess I'm similar to Alicia in the sense that I went to a Catholic primary school, but for my secondary school I went to like one that didn't really have religion, so it was interesting to kind of see the difference between the two, because obviously in the Catholic primary school we focused on like Catholicism, and like that was it, and we did 1 or 2 lessons on like Islam, but that was it. But I obviously didn't mind because I'm a Catholic myself, so I guess it was good for me, and like my parents chose for me to go to that school for a reason. But for secondary school, we did, for GCSE, we were forced to do it like RS, even though we're not a religious, or it wasn't a religious school, and we did Christianity and Islam, and it was really interesting to do those 2 religions in particular, because they do have quite a few similarities, but they're also quite different. So I think I enjoyed that, and I guess it exposed me to a range of different religions opposed to just Catholicism and Christianity as a whole. So I guess I'd say that's the biggest difference between primary and secondary.
Great, that's really interesting. Thank you. Ashley, did you want to add something?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that it depends on your school as well. It's like different schools do like different things. And in my past school, which was a grammar school. Sorry about that. Like we did.
What would you say was different about that?
Oh, sorry. That my connection just cut there. But I was gonna say that different schools such as like grammar schools and like normal schools, because now I go to a normal school, they do like less about religious studies than they did in grammar schools, should I say.
So you felt they allocated more time to it?
Yeah, because you see like they were more like religious and like they just focused a bit more on it. I did more like trips.
What was an example of a good trip that you enjoyed or thought was valuable?
Probably like going to this historical museum in another country even. We actually did that. Yeah, for religious studies, yeah.
What was the nature of the museum?
Well, it was really fun and we learned quite a lot about the extent of religious studies and like the origins and the past applicances of it as well.
Can I ask any of the other members of the SACRE committee now, if you haven't had a chance to speak yet, whether there's any points you'd like to explore a bit further? Go ahead, Ruth. And two others, whoever that is.
I just wanted to say thank you to the young people who have taken the time today to come and talk to us about their experience of religious education. I think it's really important that we hear from your point of view how you experienced religious education in school. I'm a head teacher of a primary school, so we deliver the curriculum to you, but it's really nice to hear your views of having experienced working through that curriculum in schools. It's really nice to hear that you appear to really value the practical approach to learning about religion. I teach in a Catholic school, and I would say that hopefully the Catholic teaching has moved on a little bit in that it's not just purely about Catholicity. Obviously, that's a core aspect of our teaching in the school and the priority religion that we teach. But we do endeavour to try and look at other faiths. And we particularly, for example, in my school, we look at Judaism, but we've identified Islam as a key focus for children to learn in every year as they move through the school. We picked that out especially as that's often a religion that's not understood. And so we wanted the children to have a really good understanding of that religion as they move through the primary school. We encourage through that approach an understanding of respect, an understanding of the religion, a respect of each other's religion and tolerance of each other's faiths. So what I'm really picking up from you is how much you value the practical approach, the engagement, for example, with religious arts and your involvement in that creativity within the subject. And I think also I'm picking up from you that you'd like to be living the faith. So maybe opportunities to do charitable works, a practical approach to learning about the religion, not just it being a textbook approach. So that's something that I can take back to the TIFA team, which is the Thurrock Primary Heads, and feed some of that back and say that practical approach is something that you would like to see moving forward. I hope I've understood your views correctly, but I wanted to say thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us about that today.
Thank you. Harjot Kaur, did you want to add anything?
Hi there. First of all, I'd like to thank the Youth Cabinet for coming and answering these questions for us. So I had two questions. The first one was to anybody from the Youth Cabinet of apart from Judaism and Islam, did they study the Sikh faith at all? And if they did, do they remember learning anything about the Sikh faith? My second question mentioned earlier about not feeling stimulated in the RE lessons. What two things would they like to see in their RE lessons for more stimulation and more how they could gain more knowledge?
Thank you. We've got loads of people indicating: Ashley, CC, Alicia, Danielle. So off you go. Feel free to all have a comment on those as you see fit.
Oh, shall I start or not?
Go on then. Just jump in.
Oh, I was going to say, we did do a little bit in my primary school about Sikhism, but we didn't do that much at all. We just did like one lesson on it, and then we went straight back to Christianity. And it was like quite weird because they just tried to slur it out, because I don't think that the teachers really know as much about like Sikhism probably as much as Christianity. I'm not sure that's the reason, but I just noticed that.
Let's go CC, Danielle, Delisha, Alicia, if that's okay.
We learned about Sikhism in secondary school. We didn't do it as part of the GCSE course, but we did do it, I think, in year 7 or 8. And I particularly remember the story about Guru Nanak and like that part of Sikhism. And we did quite a lot on it, I guess, in my school, like during that time. And in terms of like the interactive nature of it and how it can be more interactive in RS, I guess if more contemporary kind of topics were discussed, I think especially in my school, like debate was really like popular. Like people like to have like religious discussions and like debates, and I think when you start bringing, when the teachers brought that aspect into the lesson, people are more engaged and willing to like have their say. So I guess instead of it being a thing where it's like theory and then you're just taught that theory and then like that's it, I think if it was more practical in the sense of discussion and debate, maybe people would find it more interactive and they just enjoy the lessons a bit more.
Thank you. Danielle?
Yeah, so I don't really remember doing very many religious education lessons because I was taken out of lessons to do different things like life skills because I have a visual impairment. So in that case, I don't really remember much, but I do remember sort of doing a few things. But because I had been taken out of those lessons, it was almost like, you know, I didn't have to learn about those things. So I feel like I don't have as much knowledge as I probably should.
Delisha?
We did Sikhism in year 4, I think, and I don't remember much, but I remember we did it for a while, and I think in year 7 we did it, and I think we just looked at the structure of the temple, and that was it.
And Alicia?
I don't think I ever did Sikhism in lessons at all. I think I might have covered it when I was in like a Cubs or Scouts or something like that, when we were kind of having a cultural discussion about faiths. I think that would have probably been the only discussion I've ever had about Sikhism. It is usually, I've only ever had sort of the discussions around Christianity, Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism. For me, Sikhism is something that I've never ever been taught in a sense. And kind of, I know it's completely gone from what we were being asked, but something that came up in the youth cabinet that I feel like is good to feed in. I know it's not relevant to this specific topic we were having, but a few members of the youth cabinet felt like religion was compulsory in non-RS schools, and that certain sets would have to do RS, and it was very much dependent on whether you were intelligent or not, would depend whether you did RS. And people didn't like that, the fact that intelligence was being compared to the fact that you had to do RS. And it wasn't something that you had a choice for, despite not going to a faith school. Yeah.
Could you expand on that a bit? So was it that some people got to do RS as a lesson and some didn't, or some got to do it as an exam and some didn't?
So both situations. So depending on how intelligent you were dependent on whether you would have RS lessons or whether you would have citizenship lessons. So if you were more lower down in kind of that's a really bad way of wording it. But if you were seen to be not as intelligent, you would have citizenship lessons and you would be more going down the citizenship and the ethics route. But if you were seen to be more intelligent, you would be seen to do the more religious side of it and stick to the RS side.
And was, as far as you know, was religious education intended to be covered within citizenship as sort of a theme within it?
No, it was completely separate.
Be an interesting one to follow up, because the law says that everybody should get at least some RE because it's important to understanding culture and society. If I chuck it to members,
can I just add on to that? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I'm really sorry, because that was about GCSE options, wasn't it, Alicia, if I remember correctly, if that's helpful.
Yes, but then I have had a discussion with the people who said that, and they've said that it was a bit of a issue that happened when they were in lower school as well.
Okay.
Interesting. Just to give people a bit of warning, I was going to finish this discussion by asking members of the Youth Cabinet the last question, which is, if you were in charge of the RE curriculum, what would you change? So I'll just give you a bit of a moment to think about that one. But before we do so, are there any other questions, either ones that aren't on the list or anything that's come up that other members of the committee would like to explore a bit more? Have you got your hand up, Deborah, or a pencil at least? You're muted. You're still muted. She's talking really excitedly on mute. There we go.
I got there. The mouse trying to drag it across the screen. Yes, I was really interested in to ask you the sort of our second from last question. I know the chair has pulled up the last one. Because it's a question that we often get, that in society, in British society, for example, we've got quite a large number of people with non-religious worldviews, but likewise we have others that have religious worldviews. And what I wanted to ask you is to what extent you recognise the religious or non-religious beliefs of your own family in the teaching you receive in RE. So when you get taught about the traditions that you recognise, whether they be non-religious beliefs or religious beliefs, to what extent do you recognise it in what you're being taught?
Interesting. Anybody feel free to jump in on that one?
Ashley's got a hand up. Chair Ashley has Ashley's put a hand down.
All the hands have gradually disappeared there.
There you go. Cece's there. Cece's going for it.
Go for it, Cece.
I guess in secondary school, when we do RS and we learn about like Christianity and I guess like Catholicism, like in particular, I guess when I learned about it in school, but then what I was like practicing in church and like how my family practiced Catholicism, I guess there was a disparity and there was a bit of a difference there. And I guess the way it was taught like in my school, it was kind of made to seem like quite it's hard for me to word it, but quite orthodox and quite rigid and like quite backwards almost. And I guess the way it was like Catholicism is like in my church and like at home, it's not really the same. And I guess I felt in some instances Catholicism in particular was quite misrepresented, in a sense that the way it was presented, it was as though the religion is not that progressive, when in some like instances it is. So I guess in that sense I kind of found it hard to recognize Catholicism in school versus like the way I practiced it at home. So I found that like quite interesting. But I mean, I guess for the fundamental parts it was the same, but in some instances it seemed like I would walk out of a lesson and I'd think, well, that's not the way I do things like at home, like in the way I like, practice my faith, and that's not what we're really taught in church, but that's what people are being taught. And then I guess like my classmates and like people that are in the lesson, they kind of get a bit of a skewed view on that religion. And I guess maybe if someone was Muslim in my class or someone was a different religion and we learn about their religion, they would also kind of feel like their religion was a bit misrepresented. And that's just something that I noticed throughout my lessons.
Can I quickly jump in to say I would quite agree with what Cece said. I found that a lot of my obviously I did go to a Roman Catholic kind of school, so it was expected, but a lot of the education we had on Catholicism was very Roman Catholic denomination based, and a lot of the students in the classes weren't always Roman Catholic denomination based. And a lot of the time, obviously I don't practice religion at all, but I know a lot of my friends who were in those lessons were saying that a lot of the things that they were being taught were completely not relevant in kinds of what they'd practice and kind of the sorts of things that goes on in their churches and all sorts of things that they would do to do with traditions in their faith. In the fact that they're being taught RE in a school, but it's not kind of teaching them anything to do with what's going on with them. Kind of just want to chip that in there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems several people have had similar experiences to that. Ruth?
Just wondered, would you be willing to give an example of what you were taught in school and the experience, just so we can understand what the difference is that you experienced?
I guess, for example, with priests, I guess we were taught that obviously in like Catholicism, a priest, that they can't have like a wife and they can't have children, and yeah, that is like the Catholic faith. That is like what happened. But at least for me, with my priest, I guess he had a bit of a special circumstance in a sense that he did have children and he had a wife previously, but then when his wife like passed away, he decided to become a priest. So obviously like he still had those children and he did previously have a wife before she passed away, but like in the lessons it was taught like, no, there's no way that you could have had a wife and like no children or anything like that. But then I obviously knew it to be kind of different, and I guess that's an example where in Catholicism there are kind of ways around what would be considered the orthodox route into like priesthood and things such as that. And I'm pretty sure there are other examples, but I can't really remember like word for word like particular things. But I just remember in general I felt as though like my religion was being a bit misrepresented like in lessons.
Right. Now that's really helpful. So do you think it's possibly the subject knowledge of the teachers, in that they're maybe trying to deliver the textbook view of the religion, maybe don't have that deep understanding of the religion, so that where you're having the discussions and debates, they can give you that wide, broad understanding and knowledge of what the true religion is like. So maybe that comes down to subject knowledge of the staff, to be able to explain that religion and the rules within that religion to people. And I think that's difficult. That's something that is hard for staff to get that wide knowledge across a range of religions as well, to get that deep understanding. So maybe to try to look for expertise in communities, to invite visitors into school who can talk knowledgeably about different religions, because it's so important to get the right views and understanding and not get those misconceptions brought into the teaching that then leads to.
You've gone on mute for some reason, Ruth.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I don't. Did you hear the majority of what I said?
Just the last 10 seconds we lost, yeah.
I was just saying, thank you for sharing that example with me. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Great. I would love to keep this conversation going, and it's becoming really fruitful. Unfortunately, we do have some other items of business we have to tackle tonight. So what I'm going to do is just go around the Youth Cabinet members, and if you can just give me a fairly quick, if you were in charge of the RE curriculum, what would you change and maybe why? I'll just go around the order I've got it written down. So I'll go Danielle, Ashley, Alicia, Delisha, Cece, if that's all right. So let's start with Danielle.
What would I change? I would probably change the way it's taught, as opposed to it being sort of hands-on, teaching. I would say maybe bring in people that live these, different religions and tell them their sort of teachings and things like that, because it's different to learning from a textbook. If you're learning from a person who lives this, then I think it's easier.
Great, thank you. Ashley?
Oh, hello. Sorry about that. I was gonna say, the thing I would like change would be probably like the learning tactics, because like usually like sometimes they don't really in my present school, like sometimes the teachers are really nice. I'm not gonna name the teachers, but they're really nice. But like the methods of like the teaching is okay, but like it would be better if we could like have more interactive type learning, because like at the moment it's okay, but like if it was more interactive it would be like more interesting, and like everybody in the whole class would like interact with the actual teacher, because like I do interact strongly with the teacher, but like not everybody does in our class.
So more interaction. Alicia?
I would say personally to kind of the whole stereotype of RE kind of needs to be revamped. I think that there should be more emphasis on it more being about the learning of cultures rather than the learning of kind of like specific religions. Because I think if you change it to learning about cultures, I think as a generation, a lot more people would be interested in it, and it would gain a lot more respect, because if you're learning about someone's culture, you're going to be more respectful than rather kind of having to listen to a teacher talk to you about a religion that might not be applicable to you.
Okay, so focus on culture. Delisha?
Yeah, like what Alicia was saying.
Go for it.
Like more practical and more things for us to do instead of just reading out a textbook and then writing an essay on it. That sort of thing.
Are there any other things you thought? Let's go to Cece then.
I think in general, if there was like more discussion, more debate, as I've mentioned, that would be good. I guess also the trips aspect, I think is quite important, because in like other subjects such as like geography, history, you do have more trips, and like they're actually like culturally beneficial. I think it could be the same for like religious like places of worship. Obviously, like in some places of worship, it may be like more difficult to get to than others, due to like obviously where the school is and things like that. But just in general, if there were more trips to like places of worship like mosques or synagogues, churches, gurdwaras, places like that, people would be more interested as well, because seeing it in real life and talking to actual like people that practice the faith, I think it gives like a really like valuable insight that a textbook can't really offer. So I think that would be like really beneficial for RS teaching in general.
Great, thank you. I know the Gurdwara have always been really good at being open to host visits. Unfortunately, we do need to move on. Were there any final sort of questions or comments that any other members of the committee wanted to put in?
Chair, we did promise that the Youth Cabinet would have the chance to ask us any questions.
Oh, of course, yes. Has anyone got any questions that they'd like to ask any members of SACRE, either about the work of SACRE and what we do, or about their particular faith, or why they've chosen to be a member of this committee?
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So obviously we're all going to be like trying to give our points of view across, but kind of what is being done to have young people's points of view given in terms of the implementation of RE across kind of Thurrock, in terms of what's actually being done, or what do you guys do to try and involve young people to ensure that what they're getting in the RE curriculum is the most beneficial as what it could be?
I guess I'll answer a couple of those just for simplicity and grounds of time, and then Deborah or others chip in if you think I've missed anything. So, I mean, to some extent, using Youth Cabinet as sort of representatives is one example of how we try to listen to young people as we think about teaching RE in Thurrock, and this isn't the first time we've done this. There's a youth conference which wasn't able to run this year because of COVID, but traditionally been run, and that's very much a two-way interactive thing. You know, it's a chance for, I guess, for all sides to be heard. So that's really good. And then one of the reasons we've asked you to come along and speak with us tonight is because we're entering a cycle of consultation. To some extent, consultation is most important at the points where you're really actually able to make a difference. And because we're about to start the cycle of reviewing the Thurrock agreed syllabus, which probably the majority of our primaries and good number of secondaries use in some form as well within Thurrock, now's the time when the comments that people make can really make a difference. And so whilst this is one way in which I guess we can talk to at least representatives of young people, it won't be the only way that we're consulting as we come up to that review. Have I missed anything obvious, Deborah? Any other questions from members of Youth Cabinet before we move on?
I have one.
Go ahead.
What is your goal for like the future? What are you trying to get out of like the Youth Cabinet coming in and having like people talking to us?
Does any member of SACRE would like to answer that one from your perspective, or shall I pick on someone? I might go to Councillor Kerrin on the grounds that I guess you've got a particular interest. Oh, you stuck your hands up anyway. There we go.
Yeah, I just think that this should become much more regular, having representatives from the Youth Cabinet in, because I think I've certainly been sort of really interested in what's being said and written down quite a lot actually as well. So I just going forward, could we make this a regular thing rather than a nice surprise that the Youth Cabinet are here? Because it's just been really interesting, you know, and given a lot of food for thought, I think.
Absolutely.
We've done it 3 times in total, I think. So I think we did it just over a year ago, but unfortunately, only one member of the Youth Cabinet and her brother, who happened to be bringing her along, was able to come. And then the previous year, Alicia, did you come the first time? Have you been here before?
No, but I remember Gabriella, and I think it was Ewan that used to come along, I think.
Yeah.
We're talking a few years ago here.
A few years ago, yeah. So we've done it 3 times, and it's on our work plan now for once a year.
I just think it's just been really, really informative, hasn't it? You know, and just to hear from different points of view, and so yeah, just more of the same, please.
Great. So on behalf of SACRE, thanks very much to all the members of the Youth Cabinet who've come along and given up your time tonight to contribute. Thanks, Roberta, for organising this for us. That's great. We're going to move on to our next item of business now. I appreciate people have been on for sort of 45, 50 minutes already. So if members of Youth Cabinet would like to dial out at this point, that's totally fine. The expectation was only really to have you along for the item that you're directly involved in. But of course, this is a public meeting. If any of you would like to stay on for a little while and see some of what else goes on at SACRE, you are more than welcome to do that. But on the assumption that many of you will need to leave now, thanks very much again for coming along tonight. So
thank you for having us.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, review of Thurrock SACRE terms of reference. This is basically our constitution, so it describes what we do and the practical mechanisms by which we do it. It's ultimately down to the council to change it if it needs changing. However, clearly they consult SACRE and would normally only engage in that, I guess, if we were keen for that to happen. So we've got a copy of the proposed constitution here with revisions. The recommendation is that we agree this and recommend it to Thurrock Council for adoption. But before we do so, are there any comments, additions, changes, questions that members of SACRE have got about the constitution that's here in the agenda? Deborah.
So two quick suggestions. On page 17, which is the membership and composition of SACRE, it's always a moving feast, this, because trying to find the right organisation to tell us who is an appropriate representative of a particular faith, can be quite a challenge. And I think under Free Church Christian members, I think probably the most appropriate group to look for those would be the Free Church Education Council. They have a specific remit, and if you go to their website, they actually include in their remit finding SACRE members from the free churches. So I think that would be a better solution. And in fact, the Federal Council no longer is a charity, so no longer exists as in that form. So that was one suggestion. And the other was a bit more contentious, and that's the issue of quorum. So at the moment, we ask for to make sure that each committee is represented, and that's because the way we vote is each committee has one vote. So as long as each committee is represented, we can deal with our business. But at the moment, we've also got quorum of a third of members, and this is a bit tricky because the more people, the more diversity we bring into SACRE, and the more members we bring in, particularly into Group A, the more difficult then it becomes to form a quorum. So I wonder whether we actually need that or not. I think possibly the representation from each committee might be sufficient, and we don't need a third.
Open it up to anyone else to comment. Ruth?
Is the current situation that somebody has to be present from all of the 4 groups? Is that correct? And are you suggesting that to have a representative from 3 of the 4 groups would require it?
No, you couldn't do that because you can't even vote if you haven't got one representative from each committee. What I'm saying is we've got that. What's in this particular version is to say that you need a third of members to be.
Sorry, I misunderstood you.
Yeah. So that sort of ups the number. And as I say, when we're trying to make Committee A as diverse as possible, we keep adding people, then the quorum becomes higher and higher and higher, and we become inquorate more often, which is not a good thing.
Anyone else on those or any other aspects of the Constitution? I'm going to ask a question then and possibly put Councillor Carron on the spot. I believe at the moment the Constitution that's actually in force right now says that we have 2 elected members of the local authority nominated by council. This suggests to increase it, and I know the reason that suggestion was made was because on several occasions over the last couple of years we've not been quorum because we were unable to get an elected member along. The suggested solutions were either to have more elected members nominated to the committee, or to have substitute members nominated so that if one of those on the committee couldn't come along, they could at least call on a substitute who was kind of constitutionally had to be there. We seem to have sort of gone both barrels in this version of it by suggesting both that we double the number of members and allow substitutes. Now, because of the way the voting works, it actually makes no difference. It's still one collective vote per committee. So there's no issue of vote stuffing anywhere here. The SACREs don't work that way. But I wondered whether you knew or could sort of take a view, Councillor Carron, on whether the suggestion that we asked groups to try and find 4 members for SACRE as an outside body would be welcomed, or whether we already struggled to find enough 2 and whether substitutes is a better answer.
I think a couple of points there, Chair. I think firstly, from my, because I've been on this committee basically since I've been elected. It's one of the first committees, so I've been on it a long time now, and I think you'll possibly struggle to find more members, but equally I think with 4 members nominated, you end up in that kind of starting to bring SACRE into political balance and things like that, and I just think perhaps 3 one Labour, one Conservative, and one Independent, and that deals with both the numbers and also, you know, it stops SACRE being involved in who should get the fourth seat, so to speak, you know, and takes it away from being sort of, you know, politicised. But that's just my personal opinion, and I'm ultimately happy with whatever we decide collectively as a committee. But I just think possibly those are 2 points to sort of think about.
Chair, if I may, could I just offer some clarity? Is that okay?
Yep.
Just kind of going off of Councillor Caring's point, currently with regards to Committee D, we have vacancies on, so we had 3 members already on Committee D. So we currently have 2 members already elected, Councillor Caring and Councillor Collins, and we currently have a vacancy. I completely agree with his point. You know, if we kind of add an extra one on with the 4, that could make it go into political balance, and obviously that's down to SACRE whether we kind of go through that. So kind of going off of that basis, then I'm getting the assumption that we're possibly better just going ahead with maybe adding substitutes rather than increasing the overall membership.
That certainly sounds wise, and 3+ subs in some ways makes it easier when it comes to full council, because it's fairly obvious we're asking each group for a member and a sub. So far, I think the suggested changes are Free Church Education Council rather than Free Church Federal Council, to remove the numerical requirement for a quorum and say that we are quorate if we have at least 1 representative of each committee. And can I check with you, Deborah, would that be reasonably accepted practice amongst other SACREs that you support?
Definitely, yes, that's exactly the wording.
We're not doing anything weird or unique by doing that.
No, definitely not.
Okay, and for the Group D to be 3 members nominated by council and 3 substitute members. So those would be the 3 changes to this that I think we're suggesting we would make before putting it forward. Are there any other questions or suggested changes before we vote on that recommendation? Okay, I'm happy to move it to the recommendation, which is that we agree the revised constitution of Thurrock SACRE as set out in Appendix 1, subject to those 3 changes. Have you got those clearly, Kenna?
I have, thank you.
Good. Yeah. So could I ask everyone to just kind of nod to indicate agreement? If anybody does not agree or wishes to abstain, could you make that clear, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Moving on to item 6, Spirited Arts. This is a verbal update, so over to Deborah, please.
Got the mute button unmuted quicker that time. I'm getting better. Okay, so we discussed at the last meeting, I think, this programme called Spirited Arts, which is a national competition run by NATRE. And what we thought we would do was to run a local competition. I'd like to minute my thanks to Susan Lampkin, who works with Andrea, and she has been marvellous. And what she's done is she's set up a portal where people can register their interest in being part, the schools can register their interest in being part of this competition, and our local version, and then they can also, once the deadline comes in the spring term, they can upload the scanned version of that resource, that piece of artwork as well. So that's being done. We're going to be putting out an announcement about it in the next head teachers briefing, timing to be determined by events, as you would expect, so hopefully sometime this month. Or maybe a bit later. I'll ask Andrew's advice about that. We've asked Christina, I contacted to ask if it could go through TIFA, and that's obviously Ruth. I think you're representing TIFA today, so we want it to go to TIFA and also to the secondary equivalent so that we can get the publicity out there. I've drafted letters to local companies to ask if they can donate some prizes. Andrew has kindly said that some funds can be found to buy some prizes, but it'd be great if we could get some local companies to donate. And if you have any contacts yourself, SACRE members, of any just small prizes, it doesn't have to be, you know, trip to the Bahamas, you know, any kind of particularly appropriate prizes, either linked to spirituality or linked to the arts. I think that would be really lovely to do that, and we'll have winners and runners-up prizes, and hopefully get the media involved and social media to publicise it. Because I know, Phil, you're often talking about getting the name of SACRE out there, and this is one very effective way of doing that. Also works well during lockdown, because obviously this is the kind of task that can be set quite easily for children to do at home. So yeah, that's where we are. So thank you very much. I don't know if anybody's got any questions.
Questions or comments for minutes?
Just to say, Deborah, I think the bulletin may be, the head teacher bulletin that we're putting in will probably be put back a week. So it will go sort of towards the end of the month. It was due to go next week, but the member of staff that's putting it together is off sick this week.
Right.
So hopefully we can get it out by towards the end of January.
Lovely. And we'll then do our judging in our summer term meeting, and Kenna's working on trying to get the dates to work better for that, because we've tended to meet at the end of the summer term, and that's rather a long time for people to wait for their results, you know, to see who won, if you like, from the end of the Easter term, the spring term, to the end of the summer. So we're doing some negotiations, if you like, to get the dates right.
I wonder if, obviously with the move to remote learning, and maybe Ruth can help with this, whether we allow parents to upload onto the portal themselves rather than the schools having to do it, because obviously schools are very busy. And the children could be doing this from home as one of their projects, you know, one of their remote learning projects. Maybe the parents could have the ability to upload it.
The only problem with that, Andrea, sorry to interrupt, is that we're only going to allow 2 entries per school, because we've got to judge these. And you can imagine if whole classes or whole year groups enter this competition, and often you do get significant numbers of entries, it's going to be really impossible for SACRE to be able to do the judging. So although you can put 10 entries into the national competition, we thought 2 per year group, two per age group for us. So I don't know how that will work, or whether that will be too difficult for schools to do.
I take Ruth's advice on that. I don't know. I mean, I guess they're really busy at the moment.
We are very busy, but I think we would see the value in offering this out to children and them experiencing the opportunity to be part of the competition. And it would be nice for within the schools. I'm sure they would have an internal competition that would lead to choosing the 2 that would be sent forward. So I think where children are hopefully going to be able to, through their remote learning, send pieces of work electronically into the school, that would be something that hopefully would be manageable then to forward that onto the portal that you're suggesting. I imagine it's a electronic picture that's sent into the portal. Would that be right?
That's correct.
So that shouldn't be too much for once the 2 images are selected to actually upload those to the portal. So I'll probably hear a different version from my colleagues at the TIFA meeting, but no, I would be happy to say that would be manageable going forward.
Jackie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether it would work, but secondary RE has a TAS meeting in January. Well, it's meant to have one in January, so it might be worth sending it through them as well, so it gets out to the secondary schools quicker.
Jackie, can you share the current contact name for TAS, because I'm getting bounces to that email at the moment. So I'd love to have the most recent TAS contact.
Yeah, I will get onto that and forward it to you as soon as it comes to me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So just to clarify, it's 2 per age range. So we're going to have an early years, then we're going to have Key Stage 1, lower Key Stage 2, upper Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5. So if you're primary, you know, you're only uploading a handful of pieces of work, not 30 or more.
That's great, thanks for that. And that's really exciting to see that coming together. And I really look forward to seeing some of what's produced. You don't often get to see this, but ironically, it feels like quite good timing for that, with a lot of work going on at home at the moment. Shall we move on to item 7 then, which is update on national developments and opportunities, which is over to Deborah again, I think.
Yep. Thank you very much, Chair. There isn't very much on the update of national developments at the moment, because obviously we've actually met relatively recently, if you like. But anyway, the list of things that I've included, I want really to ask your permission to share these with schools so that they're aware of them. And the first one that I've put for your interest is the launch of a review into faith engagement. Now, and this is just signalling, if you like, something that's going to come to you in the future. So there is a new, Colin Bloom has been appointed as a faith engagement advisor by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. And he's made this review. Some of the questions we've put on our consultation that we were talking about just earlier are versions of the questions that he asked, which are quite interesting. He specifically asked a question on religious education as well, which I was quite amazed and delighted about. So it'd be really interesting to see that. The closing date for that, it was quite short, and that's now passed. But as soon as the report comes back, obviously we will want to put it on the agenda to see what has been found about how the government will want to go forward with engaging more with faith communities, which I think is an excellent initiative. Be really interesting to see how that works in practice. So that's the first one. The second one is out of date before the ink even dries, because obviously as soon as you write something about Ofqual in the current circumstances, new announcements came out. I think there's another one today actually from Ofqual. So I just wanted to keep really people up to date with the kind of work that we're doing in terms of religious education, just to make sure that we don't become one of the also-rans when we start talking about religious education, talk about the curriculum. And yeah, so that's about that. And I'm sure the schools have already been informed about these changes as they come about. The next one was about religious literacy, creativity, and the classroom. And there's an interesting publication called which is being launched by the Lincoln Diocesan Board of Education. And they're going to run a symposium, which is going to be run virtually on the 23rd. So it's open to RE teachers, well, anybody that's interested really to register. And because it's sponsored by a trust, obviously it's free to attend. So if you want to join, you can just register using those links. And then the next part, we had some bad news, didn't we, that the bursaries for training teachers had been cut for loads of subjects, not just RE. We weren't terribly surprised about that given the state of the economy. But what we were really pleased to hear was that, to our delight, religious education managed to survive in the list of subjects to receive subject knowledge enhancement. And I think that what we've heard this evening from our youth cabinet about subject knowledge of teachers is quite evidence really of why that needs to stand, because it's so important when people are teaching either the depth study of one religion, and we've talked about Roman Catholic tradition and the faith schools that are taking that approach, a much more theological approach. You need a lot of subject knowledge to do that, as well as understanding of diversity. And if you're teaching 6 world religions and non-religious worldviews, again, you need lots of subject knowledge. So we need those courses, and I'm glad that that common sense prevailed and that those are continuing to be funded. So all I wanted your permission from really is to, well, first of all, to invite you to join any of the initiatives that are there, but also to be able to share them through the briefing.
Great, thanks for that. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments on any of those items? Just to say on the first one, Deborah, by coincidence, I happen to know Colin reasonably well. So if we did want to put a submission in from Thurrock SACRE and stuck my name on the bottom, I'm sure it would get noticed.
I think we should definitely use that contact.
Doesn't harm, does it?
That's excellent news. To be discussed further later, please.
But yeah, sometimes you've got to grab your opportunities, haven't you? And there's some really good questions on that list that it would be worth us making a submission on anyway. And given that we possibly have a route in, then it might be worth doing.
Yeah.
So we said we were going to consider suggested actions. I think we were going to make the recommendation that we circulated these opportunities to schools. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's some good stuff in there. So we'll get those kinds of recommendations a bit clearer in the next agenda. But I think we'll the recommendation is first that we note all the information in there, and secondly that we circulate this to schools via the bulletin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that they've got access to this stuff and can pick up on any of these opportunities. I mean, things like subject knowledge enhancement, that's really useful to know. So is everyone happy with that? Any abstentions or opposed? Very good, that's unanimous. So item 8, what do stakeholders say about RE in Thurrock? This is in 2 parts. So the recommendation was firstly that we had a discussion with young people from the Youth Cabinet, which we did as the first item tonight. And will a summary of some of the discussion be able to go in the minutes, Ken? I know it was quite hard to scribble it all down.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll make sure there's a summary in there.
Great, thanks. If anyone had any notes of points that they particularly thought were very pertinent that you want to pass on to Kenna, just to make sure that she got them. I know it was pretty free-flowing discussion, then do feel free to pass those on. The second part of this item was that we need to agree what other stakeholders we're going to consult, both as part of our monitoring work and to inform the revision of the agreed syllabus, which is coming up. I know I bounced this on you at very short notice, Deborah. Did you manage to come up with a sort of a suggested list of who we might consider for that?
I was really lucky, Chair, because I found that on our work plan, I'd already made a list.
Oh, great.
So I don't know if I can share. I don't know if I can share screens on this platform. Does anybody know if you can? What does that say? Let me try the 3 dots. The 3 dots seems to be the route for everything.
It's the square and the arrow, I think.
Oh, square and the arrow. Share content. Okay, share content. What's it going to let me ask for? There you go. Click. Can you see that?
We can see a blue text box if that's what we're supposed to be looking at.
Yeah, and has it got a list of in the center, in the middle row, Spring 21? Can you see? Right, so relationships. So the list that we came up with, and we can't, even with the wind behind us, we wouldn't be able to have consultations with every single one of these every single year. So schools and academies, obviously, and I was thinking particularly of maybe heads or principals of multi-academy trust. It would be really interesting to hear from some of those. The council itself, maybe some people that are on, particularly councillors or leaders in council that might be interested in talking about this, particularly community cohesion people. Governors we've worked with before. The communities obviously are on SACRE already. The team that look at community integration, we've had interaction with them before, and I keep in touch with them in case anything relevant comes up. SACRE, that's the National Association of SACREs. The Youth Cabinet, we obviously talked to this evening, and then the Regional Schools Commissioners. I have tried on many occasions to get the Regional School Commissioner for this area to come to SACRE, and I haven't been successful, but I'm not going to stop trying.
Would any of those be able to give us kind of insight or examples on current good practice, what the trends are in agreed syllabuses, that kind of thing, so that we're able to learn from others?
I was thinking particularly local multi-academy trust principals would be interesting people to learn from, particularly to learn about what the barriers are. I think some of the things we've heard this evening suggest there are quite a few barriers, and it might be interesting to talk to them. I don't know, other people might have different views.
Go ahead, Ruth.
I think to invite the head teachers, principals, but also to invite maybe the RE leaders who are actually at the coalface delivering the curriculum to the children, and they might be able to elaborate a little bit more on what the barriers are.
I wonder, could we do some kind of symposium or workshop with RE leaders? One of the advantages of the dial-in thing is it's sometimes easier to arrange those at the moment.
Certainly possible. How many people come to the TAS meeting, Jackie?
We have, on a good day, 5. And there's me and Angela straight away, which negates us. And then there's usually at least 2 others.
So
but they are from a range of different trusts. And the next TAS meeting, I believe, is meant to be online on the 29th of January. So it might be worth bringing that up there.
Yep. Chair, what were you thinking? Asking maybe a larger group of teachers, perhaps, to come and join a SACRE meeting and have a sort of Q&A like we're had this evening with the Youth Cabinet?
Yeah, I don't know what others think. That was going through my mind. So, you know, to some extent, we've heard a few representatives of young people who are quite articulate in talking about their experience. I think Ruth's quite right that teachers of RE are very much at the front line in this, and it'd be really good to hear some of their experiences, either about the subject and how it fits in the curriculum anyway, or specifically about the agreed syllabus where they're teaching off it. Well, clearly they're pretty broad categories. Do we think that about summarise it in terms of the range of people we ought to be consulting with, and we can set up some more detail below that? Go ahead, Ruth.
Are there educational bodies linked to the different religions? I know that there's the Catholic Education Service for the Catholic faith, but would there be anybody who could represent the specific religions with a view to education?
They have they tend to be the people that we ask to nominate our faith community representatives. But there wouldn't be any harm in, so for example, the Board of Jewish Deputies, for example, have an education wing. Church of England obviously has its own education people. Lots of different Sikh organisations, aren't they? Lots of that can become a bit contentious. So I'm very happy to have you. Yeah, possibly.
Maybe we could start with our own nominating bodies, and I imagine that when what's it called, an approved syllabus?
Agreed syllabus, yeah. Agreed syllabus, yeah.
What's the body? What's the special sort of group that we put into being in order to do the review? It's a
agreed syllabus conference.
Conference, that's the word I'm missing.
Yeah.
So when we reach that point, it might be worth reaching out to all of our own nominating bodies and asking for their input. I presume we do some kind of call for input that's quite open as part of the process.
You could ask the RE Council. That might be an interesting thing. If somebody from the Religious Education Council came along, and they represent all the different professional organisations as well as all the different faith bodies, that might get you the discussion we were talking about last time about religion and worldviews, for example, because they are working hard on that particular piece of idea and principle, this idea of a new vision for religious education. So that's quite an interesting group of people to have, especially in the year before we revise our agreed syllabus. Could ask Professor Trevor Cooling of the RE Council. This is the wonder, you see, of having online meetings, because even though he's in Cheltenham, we're not asking him to drive halfway down the country. He can just click on the screen and come along.
Harjot Kaur?
I was thinking maybe we could ask retired RE teachers, because obviously they've taught RE, they'll have experience in it. and they will have the time to sit down and read it as well, maybe. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, people with recent experience who now have a bit more time but still interested in the subject can sometimes be an interesting source. Okay, so there's a list there to start with, which we seemed broadly content with. We've added a couple of others. In terms of the second recommendation on that item, are we happy to go forward with that as our sort of list of people we're going to start engaging with, both for agreed syllabus and more generally in our monitoring? We're not saying it's a closed list. I think we're happy to add others to it, but equally we do need some to work on. Everyone content with that? Any abstentions or opposition? So that's unanimous. And with 3 minutes left, we move on to the final item, which is the annual report of SACRE for 2019-20. You'll have seen the draft which was in the minutes. We've since put a chair's introduction together. There's a bit of debate as to whether John Guest should be writing it, because most of the stuff in the report was happening during his tenure as chair. I did speak to him. He was happy that I wrote it, but those who've seen the introduction will realise that I've largely referred it back to John and what he was doing over the past year, and just also acknowledged his work over a number of years in SACRE, to which he's made a huge contribution. I think it was important to get that in. So hopefully you've had a chance to read both the report and the revised introduction. Does anyone have any comments, proposed corrections or changes? Is that your hand up, Deborah?
It is, yeah. The only issue that I've got with this report at the moment is that the Department for Education have made a decision some time ago to say that they would not publish examination results for 2020 due to the fact they were school assessments, and we all know about some of the challenges that happened around that time. I was hoping that we would be able to still be able to get examination, so the numbers of entries, because of course that's not so contentious. But I have tried very hard through all the different portals, if you like, that collect that data, and I've asked the DFE themselves, and they don't have it. So the only way I can get that data will be to contact each school individually. And I just wanted to, if SACRE would like me to do that, then I will try to do that. But just be aware that if I do try to do that, it will delay the publication of the report. If you don't think it's worth it, we just wait till next year and we will have the summer 2021 results. But I suspect, I don't know what Ruth and Andrea think, but I suspect the data will go the same way if it's school assessments.
It's been confirmed that there won't be any results published next year. That was confirmed before the lockdown, that results wouldn't be published, and now of course exams won't be taken either. So we won't get data for the last year or this year, and part of me thinks schools have got so much on their plate at the moment to ask them to do something retrospectively about last year's potential exams is quite, I don't know. I take it, obviously I'll take Ruth's steer on this, but I think some schools are you know, more than others, especially some of our secondary schools are struggling with what they've got on their plate at the moment, as well as trying to get their heads around testing students.
Lola, you had your hand up. Did you want to come in?
I was actually going to say what Deborah said about the fact that there's no data this year and there won't be any next year either. That what other way could we get this information?
Yeah, so I think that the question is, do we approach schools to try and get hold of data on entries, which obviously isn't results. The advantage of that is at least we get a picture of where pupils are being entered for exams. The disadvantage is it could take a long time. The results could be partial. It could delay publication of the reports, and it's, you know, if that data eventually becomes available, we will have it in other documents. It doesn't necessarily have to go in the annual report. Could I just ask Councillor Kerrin? I know once this is published, it gets presented back to council, and in the past you've kindly done that for us. Are you happy to do that again? And did you have a date in mind of a full council to take it to?
Answer to the first question, yes, I'm very happy to report on it. Second question, any date's fine by me, but I'm not sure at the moment because I think next week they're reconvening the one that failed last time through Teams and things like that. So if we say first answer yes, I'll definitely present it, and perhaps for the second one we could sort of speak after the meeting or once I know a little bit more about when all the meetings are.
Councillor Kerrin, I'm happy to liaise with yourself and the chair outside of this meeting, if that's okay with SACRE.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, sounds fine.
Chair, can I just come in on your other point? So in terms of asking schools, at the moment I've got probably about just over half of the schools I have a telephone number for the data officer in the school, and quite often I can, that's kind of question that they can answer from their own materials that they've just got on their own systems. It's not a hard question. But until I test the water this year, I don't really know how difficult a question it is. I know in the past I've rung up and they've said, "Oh, I can work that out for you," and they just tell you percentages wise.
Ruth?
I think just in the current situation and the disruption that we had last year, I think you could ask for the data, but I'm not sure how accurate that data would be, so how useful that would be. I echo the comments that Andrea made, and I think maybe just a note in the report to acknowledge that this year and next year the data isn't available due to the national pandemic would be a more appropriate route forward.
Fine, I'll definitely take your advice on that.
Okay, so I think that's the proposal. Is everyone else content that we, rather than trying to pursue more data under the current circumstances, we just make that clear in the report, the reason why the data isn't available? Is there anybody who would be uncomfortable with that as an approach? Okay, and so I think subject to that clarification, we're asking Deborah now just to make that clear, and subject to that, we are moving to accept the recommendation that we accept this as the report of SACRE for that period and arrange to have it published, and then Councillor Kerrin's kindly offered to take it to the next appropriate full council, for which there's a standing item for presenting things like this, so it gets broadcast a bit more widely. Is everyone content to agree the annual report for 2019-20? Just hold a thumb up or something if you're happy with that. Any abstentions or people wanting to oppose that? Okay, that recommendation's accepted then. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for making time to be here tonight, especially with everything else that's going on, especially those representing schools who I know have had, a huge amount of change to try and put in place over the last 48 hours. Thanks for all that you're doing. So meeting is closed at 8:04. Thank you very much indeed, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.